Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ballast Exercise Podcast. I'm Sam Trotta, your host. And as it is with everything I do in the exercise space, whether it's this podcast, my gym Striation 6, my online isometric class, Ballast Exercise, it is my mission to help as many people as possible feel, function, look, and live better through exercise. And I am excited, pleased, like a kid at Christmas today to have my special guest Greg Mack on the podcast today. Greg Mack, among other things, is the founder of the Muscle System Specialist Program based out of Columbus, Ohio, and he'll be way better at explaining that than I am. So, Greg, how are you?
Doing great, Sam. I'm super excited as well to talk to you. Thanks for inviting me.
Awesome, awesome. Well, it's great to have you, man. I'm glad we can make this work, and it didn't take too long to schedule either, which I also always appreciate.
Yep.
So, as I said before we hit record, I mean, part of why I'm doing this today is because I'm just genuinely curious about you. You're someone I've only gotten to meet in person briefly when you visited my gym in Toronto a few years back.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed the muscle system specialist course. It's done great things for me in my exercise practice with my one-on-one clients, and I think it's going to have a real impact on the trajectory of Striation 6 as time goes on. And so I was wondering if maybe you could tell the audience a bit about your background and how you came to just being an exercise practitioner.
Mm. Yeah, it's an interesting thing when been asked that before, kind of reaching back to figure out, can I identify what the seminal things were, the little motivators, little seeds planted in my mind that would have eventually led me to, saying, look, I want to be in the exercise and fitness field. I mean, I growing up, I was always involved in sports and athletics, baseball, football, basketball, and so using my body and being physical has just been part of my lifestyle from a very early age. And so I think part of that is, feeds into, why I like exercise and working with the physical body. I think that probably when I was in the service, I went into the United States Navy. I was a mechanical engineering undergrad at Ohio State and trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I was looking at maybe becoming a commercial diver. I had gotten for my 16th birthday a certification course to be a scuba diver. And I really, really enjoyed that and, worked in the Cayman Islands for summer and so was thinking, how can I do something, with diving in the ocean and looking around, didn't really see too many commercial dive programs available. And I think it was my father, I think, said, hey, what about the U.S. Navy? They've got programs, like that. And so, I went to the recruiter and chatted with the recruiter and took the tests and, scored, I guess, pretty high. And they were probably looking for engineers. And,
Mhm.
and so they said, sure, yeah, we can, get you in a contract and put you through school. And, yeah, you can be a Navy diver or Navy SEAL or, getting into our programs there. And I thought, well, okay, they're going to pay for school and I'm going to see the world. And okay, so I signed a contract with the U.S. Navy for it's kind of a two-part contract, 6 years total. But I had to pass the engineering school. And if I pass the engineering school, then I get a bonus, and then they add 2 years because they spend a lot of money on you, educating you. So I passed engineering school and emphasis in mechanical engineering, and I was enlisted at the time, and I was shipped off to the USS Swordfish, a fast attack nuclear submarine in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, which was nice, and assigned to their engineering department, operating you know, the primary power plant of a nuclear powered submarine. So in the engineering department, you're working on a very complicated system, trying to figure out, how to make this thing work, operating it, maintaining it, repairing it. And so, early on, obviously engineering is about systems and how things work. And along the way, I was fortunate enough to go to Navy dive school. I became a U.S. Navy diver. Every submarine has at least two divers. And along the way here as well, I'm involved in um, a lot of intramural military sports leagues. We had an incredible, naval base in Pearl Harbor with you name the sport, you could have a team. If your command wanted a team, you could have a team. And we had basketball and baseball and rugby and football teams, flag football teams. And so I was involved in sports there and working out on the submarine and with a couple of my buddies. And we were actually featured in 1986 Muscle and Fitness magazine. One of the guys, uh, Jeff Gerber, submitted an article to Muscle and Fitness, called our gym the House of Steel, sent him some pictures. We used Joe Weider weights, and everything. So doing
Awesome.
dips between lube oil pumps and putting a bar between the high pressure drain pipes, and doing pull-ups. And so we're working out. But as a Navy diver, though, I have to be in shape professionally now. And so in order to keep my qualification, which, I coveted and worked very hard to get, I had to meet regular physical readiness requirements, swims and pull-ups and push-ups and runs and all that. And so now I'm, really staying in shape on top of what I would normally do exercise wise anyway. And in I think all military branches, uh, there's at a minimum an annual physical readiness uh, process where everybody's got to at least run 1.5 miles in a certain period of time and do a certain number of sit-ups and push-ups. Well, if you failed that, well, then you were put in kind of a forced remedial 3 times a week training process first thing in the morning, whether you liked it or not, until you passed. And a lot of folks in my command didn't pass, and so they were asking me and some of my buddies how to get in shape and what they got to do because they didn't want to wake up so early in the morning 3 times a week anymore. And so I started helping them. And next thing you know, they're asking us about, weight belts and gloves and protein powders and desiccated liver and betacine. And I'm in Hawaii at the time. And so my roommate, who was also the Navy diver with me, we decided to wholesale that stuff from the mainland, and we just started reselling it. Next thing you know, we had a business on the side. And so I thought, oh, that was kind of interesting to me, and I really enjoyed that. And making a little extra money, so I got the entrepreneurial bug, I think, there. And so yeah, so that kind of grew, and I decided, when my contract was up, I'm gonna figure out what else to do, and maybe look at this field of exercise. And so I got out of the service and was looking around trying to figure out what to do to go back to school. What do we do? I mean, we're talking 1988 now. Um, and bounced around a little bit, got a job at a Nautilus franchise here in Columbus for $3.35 an hour, something crazy like that.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, it was pretty nuts. I could have got a really good gig probably in an engineering program, somewhere or an engineering company, but asked my grandma what to do, and she said, follow your heart and your passion, and things will probably work out. She was right about that. And so yeah, so I started working at this Nautilus Center, kind of worked my way up to managing the facility, and then was still kind of selling nutritional stuff on the side through a multi-level company I'd run into, and was at a health fair with products trying to promote it. And next to me was a chiropractor who was trying to get his practice up and running. And we started chatting and we kind of hit it off, and he wanted me to come work for him. And he was a very progressive, I didn't realize at the time, a very progressive, forward-thinking chiropractor. And he had just a straight chiropractic part of the business and massage therapists. And we built a rehabilitation clinic with, at the time, a whole bunch of pyramid selectorized machines and rubber tubes and bands. And he had a therapy side, doing intersegmental traction and heat and ice. And he taught us how to do trigger point therapy, quote unquote, and use heat and ice and intersegmental tractions. And I was sent to all these different courses on rehabilitation. And Kim Christensen, I think, was the hot guy at that time. and I learned how to do Doppler vascular screening and EMG testing and isometric testing and all this stuff. So I got exposed to kind of this clinical side of working with people, which I had up to that point um, really didn't work with too many. I mean, I remember at the Nautilus Center one time, a guy came in a wheelchair, and the owner would lift him up and put him into different Nautilus machines, and that was really the first time I'd ever seen anybody disabled exercising up to that point. Really, I was always with athletic, able-bodied people, and so I thought, wow, man, that's amazing. I mean, he really helped him. He loved it. This is cool. So I think a kind of a seed was planted in my mind there about working with folks, who might need a little extra attention. And then again, working in the clinical chiropractic setting, I could very readily see that most of the people there were very deconditioned, not very strong. They'd have to come back all the time. And so I'm like, geez, man, these people are not very fit. Um, and doing the exercise rehab kind of got me interested in that side of it. And then uh, I was working out with a bunch of West Side Barbell guys at the time,
Mm.
doing powerlifting, and so I'm working out at World Gym and trying to figure out how do we get these two worlds together. Um,
Yeah, like you couldn't really imagine two more. I don't know if the word's disparate, like two more contrasted worlds. You have people who are in pain, can barely move, they're deconditioned versus West Side Barbell guys. For people listening who don't know, West Side Barbell is
yeah,
probably the most famous powerlifting gym in history.
yeah. So yeah, so I was like, how does this work? And I remember in 1991, I went to the second annual IDEA Personal Training Summit. And I had learned prior to that about the American Council on Exercise personal trainer certification, which had just come out. And so I thought, well, I'll just take that certification. That sounds pretty good. And so I took that certification and, got certified and attended a workshop there in DC by Jeff Bensky. I think a psychologist trained, but doing demographic and stat stuff for Ivy League school. And he was presenting information about the upcoming baby boomer demographic, what they wanted from medicine and fitness and what their interests were. And one of the things that was glaringly clear was they wanted cooperation or coordination between medical providers and exercise and fitness providers, and I said, well, that makes sense to me.
Mm.
We're working with health. Seems like the logical thing to do. And so combine that with my experience, at Nautilus, seeing the disabled guy getting benefit and working in the chiropractic center and seeing that environment, trying to figure out how do I get these worlds together. I started writing a business plan about, it wasn't even called medical fitness then, I don't think. But I wrote a business plan called Physicians Fitness, which was trying to get medicine and fitness working together. And my idea was, well, how do I bring exercise fitness into medical settings? And so raised a little bit of money. The chiropractic clinic I was working with closed, and I had a lot of patient relationships. So I just took them, a bunch of them, and started training them out of a local gym and raised some money for Physicians Fitness, and got partnered up with another guy with the venture capitalist that helped us. He was connected up with World Gym and knew the World Gym ownership, and we started running their personal training program. I was familiar with chiropractic and some chiropractors in town, so I contracted with some chiropractors to put trainers in their clinics. And so, next thing you know, I've got 3 chiropractic clinics I got trainers in. We were managing 4, large personal training operations and large, franchise gym operations, and things are rolling pretty good. And opened up a private studio because there were a lot of people that were too intimidated to go into World Gym. Um, and then, yeah, and so I kept going. I got a contract with an outpatient physical therapy clinic and a hospital. And so I started, putting trainers there and just started, working in the medical fitness area, trying to figure out how to do that. So that's what I've been doing my whole career.
Wow, that's quite a story. I had sort of heard little bits and pieces of it through the years of knowing sort of who you were and through the various organizations we've both been involved with. But to hear it cohesively like that certainly fills in a lot of gaps. I
Oh,
always love hearing how people come to this profession.
mhm.
And your story sort of stands out to me in that it didn't seem like it came from childhood trauma. A lot of times it's people who like myself who, lost some weight and became interested in helping other people do the same. And so it's cool to hear a standout story in that sense.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely has been quite a journey. It's not easy. I found out very quickly that, as you I think alluded to earlier, the medical and fitness world did not fit together very well. The
Mhm.
language was different. The education of the providers is totally different. Tremendous political and ego turf things going on there. It was not easy at all to try to figure out how to get that to work. It's still, not an easy thing, but fortunately along the way I've gotten some good relationships with medical providers. But very early on, I remember working in the chiropractic clinic, and the system that now is the muscle system specialist course. That's really where that got started. I was like trying to figure out, okay, I know I need to assess these people because I'm looking at them like an engineer as a system. Like, I got to figure out how this system works, because in a nuclear power plant we've got pressure gauges and level gauges and pH level and tank flow rates and all kinds of stuff that are telling us, how the system's operating. But when I'm looking at a human being, I'm like, I don't have all these gauges and tell me what's going on. I better figure out ways to try to get a sense of what they can do and what they can't do. And so I started building very early on, an intake and assessment process that I just kept, working on and trying to hone and get better. Realizing that uh, the individual's ability to move and hold positions in space is just fundamental to human health. And so everything's kind of focused in on that.
Well, the assessment process was definitely something that stood out to me, among other things in the muscle system specialist course. Looking at the course, what was the impetus or the motivation or the seed for you to take your thought process and bring it to other people, other professionals, I should say?
Yeah, at first, yeah, I wasn't all that interested in that because I was just very focused on the business. But as I hired trainers and taught them how to do it, I could see they liked it a lot and they were very interested. And then they would tell other people that didn't work for me, and then they would call me and say, ask me questions. And so I started going, huh. And at this point in my career, so we're talking about, I think, 2005, 6, 7, and 8, something like that. I've been doing it for a while. I got involved with the IDEA Association, which is a very large um, personal trainer group association. And and so once I got involved with them and went to their courses, I got invited to be on their international committee for training. I became the chairman at some point. I started to see kind of, oh, wait a minute, what I'm doing, I don't see anyone else really doing. Maybe I should start putting some courses out there and see what happens. And so I started to present some of this material at IDEA, and started to get some positive feedback. So I just kept kind of said, all right, I'll just kind of keep doing this.
Well, it was a fantastic course to say the least. And for the exercise professionals listening to the podcast, I would strongly recommend it as a means of what's the word? Likely taking your exercise practice to the next level. You've likely never seen an assessment like the one provided through the muscle system specialist course. And what stood out to me is that it's thorough, it's procedure based versus sort of protocol based, as is, I would, would it be fair to say that the whole system works on a procedural basis versus a protocol basis?
Yeah, it's mostly about collecting data.
Right.
Just being a good field scientist and going around and collecting the data, and then doing an analysis to figure out, okay, what does this data mean? And how do I interpret it, and how do I leverage it to make critical decisions about what to do, versus what typically goes on, which is highly biased, pretty much guessing. Really,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
people are doing. So
Yeah. I think there's a difference between sort of educated guessing and just sort of throwing stuff at a wall and hoping it sticks. What I loved about this process is that I was going to say it takes the guesswork out, but the way it occurs to me when I really think about it is it replaces guesswork with more methodical thinking.
yeah, I think that's a good way to say it. Yeah, I would say if someone were to ask me, what do I teach? I say, I teach you how to think, be a good observer and think and write down what you see and think about what it means and what to do about it.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. One thing, and I'm going to circle back to, you mentioned trying to merge the exercise and medical fields. There was a lot of egos and it seems like there's a lot of issues with, you're sort of alluding to a lot of issues with communication. And that probably stood out to me the most in the course, just going through it. Um, as a student, you may remember a call that we had, a Zoom call that you I had when I was thinking about taking the course.
Mm,
And I had heard that there was a whole segment on sales.
mhm.
And I thought I'm a great salesperson. I've got a great closing rate. Like I probably don't need the sales part. Could I just take the physical stuff and see what the difference in the approach is? And after a conversation with you, I was sold in a positive way on taking the entire course. And it was probably one of the best mistakes anyone has ever methodically pointed out in my thinking or lack thereof, because what stood out to me was the idea of the sales process as a model for communication
Mm,
in general. And I don't know if I'm taking that too far or if that's how it's intended. Um, but it seems like, and in my experience so far, using that communication model, anecdotally, I've been able to bridge a lot of gaps between my exercise practice, my exercise facility, and other professionals in the medical and paramedical space who would otherwise have seen me as competitive.
mhm.
And so could you elaborate a little bit more on that just in terms of sales as a communications model and the thinking behind putting it front of the course?
Yeah, yeah, because it's a systems oriented approach and procedural, I kind of wanted to map it out as okay, well, what's the first thing that has to happen? And what's the second thing that should happen? And what's the pathway here that I'm trying to, map out and move somebody through? And and even before the sales, right, we do the identity role thing, right? It's you got a
Hmm.
professional, get your own head straight about who you are and what your self-esteem is like and what your values and preferences are, personally and professionally. And my father was a professional salesman for many years. Abbott Labs launched the Insure line, Similac, and all that stuff.
Oh, cool.
So I was exposed to selling, if you will, early on, and I knew that I had to come up with a way to sell or talk to and represent what I did. Uh, and I took a lot of courses trying to figure out what that was. And I realized that at some point I took a Sandler course, which was very, very good. And the, the, the process now is really built around some of those foundational ideas. Um, One is transactional analysis. But I realized, wait a second, I'm not trying to get someone to buy something here that
Hmm.
they don't really want, or I'm not trying to convince them that they need me in my sessions, right? That I'm just trying to figure out whether or not we should even work together first, and whether I'm qualified to do what they want me to do, and that most people don't really tell you what they really want or need right away. And I didn't want to be treated like a commodity. And so I realized, oh, wait a minute, this is just an interview really to a decision. This is a decision making process. And I need to know as much as I can relevant to what I do from them before I can even decide technically whether I think I should work with you, let alone whether they think they should work with me. Right. And so once I realized, oh, wait, this interviewing process really sets the cornerstone for the whole relationship, professional relationship, then I knew you have to be pretty good at this part, because if you kind of blow through that, or you think you're just selling session packages, well, now you're a commodity, um, and you're not a professional, relationship with this person. And I wanted a lifelong relationship helping someone, because I knew exercise needed to be done along the entire lifespan. And the model is, can be used for the average person as well that doesn't really have any disease, but it really was very focused on somebody with disease and dysfunction and problems. And I needed to know as much as I could about that. And many people have never said out loud really what they want or what they really need, outside of my back hurts, take away my back pain, right? And that's not enough. So yeah, so the interviewing really sets the cornerstone for the relationship properly, so that you can do those things like building trust and understanding, and they can, the prospect, we call them, the potential client, can see that you're genuinely interested in what's going on with them. I mean, what's the biggest complaint many people have about, professional services or even medical care? It's too short, it's truncated, it's rushed, right? And I'm like, no, that's not working here. We need to sit down and figure this out. So that had to be done early on.
Well, what I love about it too is it leads into the assessment process, which once that initial relationship is established with the client and you're having the conversation about moving into the assessment then presents so much value. Like I've had a couple of people go through in this past month. Um, they made an agreement to go into the assessment, and they filled out the exercise and health history questionnaire and said, "Man, you go really deep into this. Like, does this all matter?" And when it gets to the assessment, they sort of go, "Oh, I see how this stuff could be related to what you're looking at here." And all of a sudden, that relatively costly assessment becomes a sales tool in and of itself. And you're not, like you said, you're not trying to sell session packages. You're just trying to be a good be a good field scientist, be a good observer, find out information about the person, make inferences about what kind of work might need to be done. And they're going, give me more of this. This is great. I've never been. And the subtext of a very recent experience I had was I've never had anyone in the exercise space pay attention to me like this. And the person even made mention that most people in the medical space, public healthcare in Canada, I love it. And at the same time, you get seen by a maximum of about 10 minutes by a doctor on any interaction. I don't know if it's the same in the States in the insurance based system, kind of the
Pretty
same.
much, pretty much.
Yeah. So to have that much attention paid to her was a real outstanding thing. And so ongoing work, once that preliminary work is done in a, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess proper way, almost becomes not a question of if, but how much, how frequent, how long are we doing this?
Yeah.
On what frequency are we doing this? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the point right there, Sam. I'm glad you zeroed in on that. They're not buying sessions; they're buying a problem-solving professional relationship. So they're buying my ability to be an advanced problem solver and someone who's going to think and work through problems, and not just kind of blow them off when it doesn't work. And then the sessions just become part of that process. Uh, so yeah, that's really the key difference. They're buying the relationship, if anything else, not a six pack of, or 10 pack of sessions for half an hour. Now, if you want to add that in after, and that's fine, but that should be incidental to them saying, no, I want to hire this person because they know me now better than anyone else, in my healthcare world, and I can see that they're working hard to figure out how to help me here. And that's what I think most folks want. They just haven't experienced it really very often.
And so going back to the side of the exercise world that's, I was going to say that's more performance based, but it's all sort of performance based. I was going to put my foot in my mouth there. Um, that's more on the, let's say, not pain related, not dysfunction related, or not external performance dysfunction related side of things. Someone who takes on clients who want to build slabs of muscle, just sort of look better, lift heavier. Someone who's looking to generally get stronger that has genuinely no apparent dysfunction. How would you counsel them to leverage the muscle system specialist thinking and procedures to get the most out of their practice?
Yeah, I don't think it's really any different. They're probably just going to get, to the exercise prescription for whatever it is the person wants, hypertrophy or what, faster. They won't necessarily have to spend several weeks trying to tease out and solve some, movement issues and control issues, to set the person up so that they're safer to take a lot of torque and compression and shear, right? So they would just move quicker through the steps, but it's still going to give that person critical information about, what this system's capable of, and its potential before you start putting a lot of load on it and torque on it. And the more you understand the system before you start operating it, the easier it certainly is to operate, and 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 learn when to be flexible, and where to focus, your attention. So, um, yeah, it would be the same.
Interesting. So just a difference in the delineation of where the actual work happens, kind of thing.
Yeah. So yeah, like I just assessed a kid. I think he's 14, 13 years old, and a swimmer, and he wants to gain some muscle mass, and he had a couple minor issues, and uh, got him to the phase 2, in the third session, and
Hmm.
found a couple things with one of his arm elbow flexors were a little weaker relative than the other one, and something with his shoulder. But other than that, he's ready to go. So wrote an exercise prescription. Here's what we're trying to do. First 8 weeks in the mesocycle. Here's how I want you to do the exercises. Because he's out of state.
Hmm.
Uh, and so yeah, so I got to the kind of a full body strength conditioning idea pretty quickly, with a couple of minor focuses on a couple things. But yeah, see, that's the thing, right? It's the hardest thing for a practitioner of any discipline, is to figure out the right dose.
Right.
How much, and so, I'm risk averse in the beginning, and we're trying to mitigate risk. It doesn't mean we don't take risk. We're going to have to, or you won't change the body. But if you're under stimulating the system, it's not going to change, and that's what the person's really hiring you for, is some kind of change. But if you're overdosing too quickly, that's not a good experience either. And so that whole front end of this process is to help you mitigate risk and identify it, and start to figure out as soon as possible the proper dose. How much
Yeah,
should I be doing here?
yeah, that's such an interesting way of looking at it. That's just such an interesting way of looking at it as a dosage issue, or at least in part a dosage issue, versus a what kind of thing am I doing with this client? Is this client on the table with me, or are they on the gym floor with me? And I mean, I think that binary way of looking at it does probably one's thinking and one's practice a disservice, because at the end of the day, it's all exercise.
All exercise. The table's just the floor raised up. So, so
Yeah.
it's just it's just another surface to put them on, like a seated bench, or an incline bench. It's just another configuration to put them under. So, yeah, I don't think about, the table or anything else as anything other than, a place for them to be while I, perform a particular assessment. But I can assess them standing, seated, lying on a bench, incline, massage table. So yeah, they're just surface and geometric orientations to gravity. That's all.
Right. Right. And again, going back to that whole procedural way of thinking versus protocol way of thinking, you can take the person to those different geometric configurations depending on your relationship with them and what how they present to you when you or how they present to you when you first meet them.
and what they want. What do they want?
Right.
What do they really want?
Right.
Right. And that's the key about that initial interviewing process, what people call the sales process is from a decision science perspective, that's where I'm getting the fundamental objective. That's where I'm realizing, oh, this is what they really want. If someone's saying, I just want to lose weight and feel better, I'm sorry, that is not enough to make
I
critical
agree.
decisions about. If they want to lose weight, go, get liposuction. I,
Right.
I, I mean, why spend all weeks and months trying to, liposuction and be in and out of there and, have a bariatric surgeon or whoever, rip 5 pounds out of you in about half an hour.
Right.
So why are we doing this again? What does this really mean, right? And so teasing that out becomes really important because once I understand, that what they're really trying to do is avoid a heart attack because their father died at 50 years old.
Hmm.
They're 41. Oh, now I know something specific here about what they're really trying to avoid and what they meant by just want to feel better and lose weight, right? And so once the person understands that I now understand their real reason, which maybe it's the first time they ever said it out loud to anybody, now I'm connected to them professionally at a much deeper level.
Greg, I'm just aware of the time. I know we have a cap. We got about 9 or 10 minutes left in our call here. One thing I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned it a bit earlier, is that the course leads off with the idea of identity role. And it was the thing I didn't know I needed and has ended up actually being the number one thing that I need to work on in order to improve my practice as an exercise professional. Can you tell us a little bit about that and its impact on one's ability as an exercise professional?
Yeah, the identity role theory's been around, for a while. Identity research and psychology's, building steam. And there's a lot of great literature out there on the subject. Um, it primarily I was thinking about it from most people hate sale. They just hate being sold. They don't want to be a salesperson. And, I do that exercise, which I've done around the world and just about every culture. No one likes salespeople in the
Right.
sales process, but here you are, you have to do it. And when folks, when I started looking at, well, why is this so stressful to people? Why is it so negatively looked at? And it was because of the rejection and the interaction with strange human beings and how they reacted. And so when you're talking to a stranger, which is what a sales process really is, and they don't make the decision you want, you take it personally for some reason, right? And when you take something very personally, that becomes a very inwardly focused, time consuming exercise for someone mentally. And when you're inside your own head because you feel bad because someone didn't say yes, uh, and that lasts for a month, you can't be effective at other stuff because you're just ruminating on this thing too long. And that's what I could see keeping myself and other people from being steadily, regularly productive and moving on to the next thing that needs to be done versus, saying I'm going to avoid talking to people for the next 2 months because I just feel so bad about how that went. And I'm like, well, you are in the exercise business. Don't you need to have other human beings in your practice? I mean, without other human beings, you're not in practice. I don't know what to tell you. And so, yeah, that's what really got that started for myself. And then I realized, oh, wait, this is really an important concept because it's speaking to self-esteem and personality development and really the internal saboteur that's in many folks that keeps them from doing the behaviors necessary to find and meet more human beings to speak to about what they do.
One problem that I'm currently trying to solve for right now is how to bring it into a company culture that
Hmm.
has multiple trainers, how to scale that outlook, how to make it a part of our outbound marketing. And it's a tricky one. I'm wondering if you've had like what successes you've had with it and what sort of messaging you've put out that's actually been effective at communicating that perspective.
Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, that's a very difficult thing because the modern consumer generally thinks about everything as a commodity, right?
Right.
They don't want their gratification delayed. They want the solution presented immediately and executed promptly. And so understanding that pain is what people move away from the fastest, emotional or physical, they'll make decisions or at least start moving in a direction to try to solve the problem faster. It's only when I get to start talking to them in the phone and interviewing process, that I can start introducing some of these ideas about that and talk to them about how they feel about themselves, and their relationship to physical movement and activity, how they think about their own body and what it is. And unfortunately, you know, folks don't feel good about themselves,
Yeah.
and it's unfortunate that people have kind of a relatively low self-esteem and need to get their self-esteem hits externally all the time, and that's exhausting and inconsistent. So I don't know if marketing that, from the practitioner side helps the consumer think, oh, I'm going to go to somebody with a high self-esteem. I'm not sure um, if that's the case, but in terms of a corporate culture, my goodness, that's going to, if people can get on board with that, it certainly is going to limit conflict, hopefully,
Hmm.
and at least give an objective way to discuss, conflict and confrontation and when someone's not happy about something, and how to talk about it versus just walking around all grumpy and complaining to their coworkers and creating a nasty work environment. So I mean, if every decision that's made in the company should be win-win-win. So the owner's got to win, the, the trainer's got to win, and the client's got to win. And if you're working through a problem and one of those parties isn't going to win, then you got to stop and figure that out. Why aren't we all winning here?
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's a mistake people often make in business if they're, relatively detached from the service or the product or the human value of the service or the product. It's often taken for granted that if one of those parties is not in a winning position, that you're going to have a business problem. So even from a completely selfish, self-absorbed business owner perspective who doesn't care, it behooves you to to actually create the win-win-win as far as I can see.
It's tough. I mean, a business by its nature is a selfish thing.
Hmm.
In order to stay in business, you have to be focused on your business and what's good for your business, and so there is an innate selfishness there, but I don't think it's a negative selfishness per se. It's just hey, if we're going to keep doing this, we better figure out how to operate in a way that it's good stewardship and that we can stay in business and pay our bills. And but if you don't have a product or service, that isn't being requested or have value to the people in your community, who cares? Um, but what happens with the identity role thing is if only the client is winning and the employees and the staff are not, that's not going to end well. It's
Right.
just not. And often the consumer doesn't care. They want to win. They don't care if you don't. I just want to win, and so it's kind of like, hold on a second here. If I'm not winning, that's why in the course I teach folks, look, you can say no in the interview. If you don't like the way it's going, you don't have to bring everybody into your world professionally. Say no. There are
One
some
of
people who aren't going to get it.
one of the things that comes up for me is this idea of courage. One of the is this idea of courage. You have to have the courage to say no. And I've had two instructors in my life tell me this. You and Tom from the RTS program, and yours and his are the only designations I have up on my wall because in my office, because you're the only two people as leaders of the organizations that you are who have been encouraging in that sense to think for yourself, to leverage the material and make it your own, and to be okay with being wrong and to be okay with learning, take it as a lesson learned rather than a knock against who you are. And so I really appreciate that. I really appreciate you and your perspective on that.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. Yeah, Tom's real good at that too.
Yeah. Well, Greg, this has been fantastic. Where can people find you if they want to look you up?
www.exerciseproed.com. We've got free downloads, philosophy of body, if you want to see, how we think about what the body is, some of the common body views that are out there now. I'm doing a lot of speaking now and presenting at conferences, those concepts. I've got a club you can join with a ton of content on a whole variety of materials, speaking to these ideas, and course, 1-day courses and the MSS course online, which, if you're really somebody who wants to go to another level, become an expert problem solver, work kind of in that medical fitness space area, um, and really push your skill set, this course is going to help you do that for sure. It's set you up to do that. Then it'll give you, you know, access to more coursework, advanced coursework. So, but yeah, www.exerciseproed.com. Come check us out.
Excellent, excellent. If you are an exercise professional and you are looking to up your game, I would absolutely recommend any of the courses that Greg mentioned. And I think, Greg, don't you also have I can't remember the exact name. It's a sales and communications course as
Yeah,
well.
if you just want to take the sales part, the interviewing part, that is available online, and you don't have to be a part of any cohort or anything, and you can just take that if you want. Absolutely.
Yes.
It's called I think it's called selling within interviewing in parentheses for exercise professionals.
Fantastic. Yeah. So I would certainly recommend any of those courses. Greg, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure to speak to you.
You bet, Sam. Appreciate you.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.